Hi, and welcome to this video, which is about toddlers and their developmental changes, the changes in their behaviour and their sleep, and the kind of sleep challenges that these changes bring about throughout the toddlerhood years. So for the purpose of this video, when I talk about toddlers, I will be referring to 18 months or 1.5 years all the way through to 4.5 years as toddlers. So I'm going to be covering off today everything from the changes that happen around 18 months and then 24 months or 2 years, 2.5 years, and then 3 years, and kind of what you can expect that might happen along the way, those changes that are going to occur around napping and bedtime and separation anxiety and tantrums and toilet training, all of that stuff in one great video. The sleep challenges that come along with all of that stuff. If you have any questions about your toddler, please pop them in the comments below and I will try to answer as many as possible. If you are watching this on replay, hi Gemma, please feel free to pop your questions in the comments as well. I will still come in here and try and answer as many of your toddler questions as I possibly can, but we will stick to toddlers today. So hit me with your toddler questions and don't panic, I will try to answer as many as I possibly can. Okay, so if we start by thinking about 1.5-year-olds or 18-month-olds and the kind of changes that they are going through, the first thing that would be the most obvious change to me is that if they haven't already, at 18 months they're going to drop to one nap. So they're going to lose that morning sleep and just have an afternoon sleep. If you have struggled with the dropping of the nap, that nap might not be at the ideal time. If you haven't struggled, it'll just be a lunchtime nap, which will be fantastic. But a big thing that I notice a lot of parents struggle with around this time is that when they do drop to one sleep only, there's quite an adjustment for the toddler and they can become very tired late in the afternoon, and parents don't respond by allowing the kids to go to bed early enough in the evening. So I find whenever a child drops a nap, so whether they go from 3 to 2 or 2 to 1 or 1 to none, there's always an adjustment period where they need to go to bed earlier in the evening while their body gets used to only having one sleep. Now, that's not a sign that they still needed that 2 sleeps or they need a longer daytime sleep or anything like that. It's just an adjustment period. So they just need a little bit of time to adjust around that one nap a day in order to not get super overtired and grumpy. And the second thing that occurs around 18 months is separation anxiety kind of peaks for these kids. So they can become really grizzly and unsettled when you leave the room and they don't want you to leave them alone to sleep and all that kind of stuff. And that brings about a whole new challenge because on top of this, they're usually quite vocal, and able to let you know, mummy, no, don't leave the room, that kind of thing. So we know that separation anxiety is peaking, so you can kind of adjust your response in accordance with that. It's not that they're not tired or that they don't want to go to sleep, it's just they're going through some separation anxiety and they might need some more one-on-one time with you, or for you to extend the bedtime routine or sit in the room with them while they fall asleep, but not necessarily climb into bed or do anything to fully make them go to sleep, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the 18-month challenge, dropping to one sleep and that peak of separation anxiety. And I think in some ways accepting that you have a toddler now too and not a baby, and everything is going to begin to change sleep-wise as well as development-wise. Then if we move on to 24 months or 2 years, we can kind of stop referring to them in months at this point. And if you have just joined in, guys, we are talking about toddlers, so from 18 months to 3 years. And if you have any questions, chuck them in the comments below and I will try to answer as many as possible for you as I can. So 24-month-olds, 2-year-olds, yay, terrible twos. And I guess the point where most people, if they didn't already realize it, now realize they have a toddler. So they're dealing with toddlers, they're dealing with toddler emotions, toddler tantrums, and all of that kind of stuff. So the terrible twos, people say, begin at 2 years old. I tend to refer to them as the terrible under fives, because in my experience, they don't come out the other side of these behavioural challenges at 3. they tend to come out the other side closer to 4. But I also don't think it's terrible. It's just about adapting your parenting and understanding that toddlers' needs are different, and finding a parenting approach and a style that actually works for your toddler. So we've entered the terrible twos. Some children around 2 years old will begin to show signs that they're possibly ready to drop their nap, or at least have their nap reduced. So that's something to keep an eye on, because after 2, the amount of daytime sleep a child needs is quite varied. Whereas under 2, it's a lot more predictable. And people say to me, like, what is the month or the age that my child will drop their nap? And honestly, it's 2 to 3 years. And it could even be 2 to 3.5 years, but the outliers between 3 and 3.5 years are very small. But yeah, that's still a big age range, right? Like 12 months, 2 to 3 years. So you've got to keep an eye out for those signs. The other thing that your child goes through at 2, or enters the stage of, which they don't really come out of, is independence, right? So I know lots of you have been dealing with this already. The whole, I can do it, or I know my 2-year-old's always said, I do it. A lot of my way, I do it myself. So there's a big sort of battle, and that power struggle begins around the toddler wanting to exert their independence. And not only do they want to exert their independence over feeding themselves or doing up their car seat, this usually translates in some way, shape or form into their sleep as well. So if you are experiencing a lot of this independence and growth during the day, I do find that if you don't give your children enough opportunities to be independent in the day, then they will try to exert all of that independence around bedtime. So give them lots of opportunities. I do it myself, fine, you feed yourself breakfast. I do it myself, fine, you put your shoes on yourself. I do it myself, fine, you attempt to put your car seat on, and then I do it. But if you've allowed them lots of time to do it during the day, I don't think you're setting a precedent that then at bedtime they'll also be in charge. I think you've allowed them to kind of practice and exhaust their need for independence. So they're going to be a lot more compliant around bedtime, because it's not the first time they have been allowed to do it themselves. They've allowed themselves to be in charge all day and be the boss all day around age appropriate things. So then when you come to saying, actually now it's bedtime, they're a lot more likely to be compliant, rather than a parent who is always saying, no, mummy do it, no, mummy do it, around things that a toddler really could have a go at. So encourage that independence, be patient with it, but then don't be afraid to also draw that hard line in the sand around things which you still obviously have to do, like doing up car seats and boundaries around bedtime and going to sleep. Hi Jane, hi Megan, and hi Kim, and Anna, and Andrea. Hi. I will answer your questions, guys. Keep them coming. Okay, so the other thing that happens around 2 years old is they become physically a lot more capable. So if you have a 2-year-old, you've probably experienced, hi Hannah, that they can now run and climb and jump, and they will start to do things like climb out of their cot if they're not in a sleeping bag, and that kind of stuff, get into all sorts of mischief in their bedrooms. And this physical capability is kind of a two-edged sword, where they will be physically more tired, hallelujah, hopefully some more sleep, but then they also will physically start to climb out of their cot and do this kind of stuff as well. So that's another challenge for us to deal with. Now back to kind of the terrible twos and the tantrums that we start to see around 2 years old. I do really firmly believe, and my kids will attest to this because they're always telling me that they're not tired, that so many toddler sort of tantrum behaviors are actually a really tired toddler that just needs some more sleep. Because one of the key things that happens when we do get really good quality sleep is that our emotions regulate. And so without really good quality deep sleep, we don't have that emotional regulation. And so toddlers without enough sleep tend to have these really exhausting and emotional tantrums, right? Because they need to go to bed and they need to fill their emotional tank and regulate their emotions. And you'll probably find that you don't really have tantrums in the morning, sort of pre-morning tea. You know, the tantrums tend to kick in after lunch and around 3, 4 in the afternoon, or if you had a really bad night, they might kick in around lunchtime. But a lot of the time, if you have a look at your toddler's day holistically, they're either they're hungry and angry, or they're probably tired and they need a bit more sleep, and so they can't emotionally regulate, and they have these outrageous tantrums where the whole world is crumbling down around them because you cut their sandwich into triangles and not squares, you know? So sleep is key for handling those toddler tantrums and those toddler meltdowns. Okay, so we move into 2.5 years. I don't know how many months that is. And it's now seriously time to start thinking about that nap and whether it's time to drop that nap. And I know toddlers are exhausting and we can be thinking, I want to hold on to this nap forever. And it's, you know, RIP nap when it is time to drop it. But you do need to understand the signs that your toddler is ready to drop their nap. And these signs are a really big one, the delayed onset of sleep in the evening. So that sounds all fancy, but all it means is a toddler who won't go to bed until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. So no matter what you do, no matter how much you ignore them or make their sleep environment really boring, they will not sleep until quite late. So that's a delay, and it's the onset of sleep. So there's a delayed onset of sleep. That's a very big sign you need to either reduce or drop their nap altogether, because we are heading towards the age where we want their sleep to become more adult-like in structure. And we're not forcing them to grow up or do anything that's not age appropriate. It's just that we recognise that we're meeting their needs, and their need around this age is for the predominant part of their sleep to occur at night. So we're trying to work with their circadian rhythm that wants them to have all that really deep, delicious sleep in that time pre-midnight. So the more sleep they get before midnight, the more restorative it is. And if their nap is taking away a lot of that sleep before midnight, then it's time for the nap to go. So delayed onset of sleep, time for the nap to be dropped or reduced, or sudden nighttime wake-ups and you can't explain why. Could be too much daytime sleep. The other one could be a persistent early morning wake-up, which we know has lots of cues, you know, and lots of contributing factors, but one of them can be that there's too much daytime sleep around that 2.5, 3 years. So if it's affecting your child's nighttime sleep in any way, so that 7 to 7 core sleep, then that's a good sign the nap needs to be reduced or canned altogether. Okay, so that's around 2.5 years. Then we head towards 3 years. What happens now? The nap should most definitely be dropped. So unless you have a very high sleep needs child, and you will know this because they were always late dropping their naps. They probably held on to 3 naps for longer than their peers. They held on to 2 naps much longer than their peers. They've always enjoyed lots of nighttime sleep and still really long naps during the day. And then this will be the child who still needs their daytime sleep beyond 3. And it's honestly, it's not many. You know, out of the people who are watching this video, it's probably one of you whose child needs a nap beyond 3. But again, massive adjustment period. And I think probably the biggest adjustment period for the child, going from having a nap to no nap. So you might find that even though it was only 40 minutes a day, you can't drop it cold turkey. You need to go to every other day. Or you need to go to every 3rd day, and maybe just the weekends when you're home they have a catch-up nap, and kind of wean them off that dependency on that daytime sleep. And like we talked about before, don't be afraid of an early bedtime if there is that need to kind of recover from the shock of dropping that daytime sleep. And there's that adjustment period. Be really patient. They do need to adjust to having no daytime sleep. The other big change at this time is moving obviously from a cot to a big bed. So we talked earlier about learning to jump out of their cot and that kind of thing. That's one of the signs that we need to move to a big bed. But we do try to hold on to as close to 3 years old as possible. And some new research has come out recently, which is fantastic, and totally supports our philosophy on cots, which is that children actually feel really safe and secure in that little confined space. It's not a baby jail like some people will call it. They actually really like it. They don't have a lot of impulse control until really close to 3. And by impulse control, we mean if you said to them, sit there and I will give you 1 marshmallow. So here's 1 marshmallow. I'm going to go away for 5 minutes. if when I come back you haven't touched the marshmallow, I will give you 2, you know, so they're going to get a reward if they don't touch that. A lot of children until 3 don't have the impulse control to not touch that marshmallow. They'll just eat it the minute you leave the room. And that's fine, that's normal. They don't have that impulse control. So saying to them, don't get out of bed until morning, even though when you get out of bed it's fun and you get to play, it's a really big ask of most kids until close to 3 to ask them to stay in a big bed all night. So the longer you can delay it till 3 years old, the better. And the reason we would mainly say to move before 3 is if obviously there was a lot of impulse control and you felt they were ready, or if they're jumping out of their cot and it's not safe. So then we would move to a big bed. Hi Hannah and Anna. Oh, and Anna's saying hi to Amy. Cool. If you have any friends with toddlers or coming up, feel free to tag them in this video so they can join in and have a watch. If you're watching this on replay, hi, please feel free to say hi in the comments and ask me your toddler questions. Okay, so we've covered moving to toddler beds when that impulse control develops. And the other thing that 3-year-olds begin to do is become very vocal, and they are able to plead and demand and negotiate all sorts of things around going to bed in the evening. And it is so much harder to say no to a toddler who is saying, "Mummy, one more story," or "Mummy, I'm thirsty," "Mummy, sit with me," you know, than it is for it to walk away from a grizzle coming from a baby, which is essentially the same thing. So it is time to really sort of up your consistency game and begin to outsmart your toddlers and predict what they're going to be asking you for in the evening so you're not caught out, and realize that negotiating with toddlers is futile, so try to outsmart them instead, and know that they're going to ask for 7 stories and a drink before they'll go to sleep, so you can prepare with 7 stories and a drink, and then they've got nothing to ask for. Okay, the other thing to note at 3, which is really great news for you guys, is that toddlers start to respond really well to things like role play and rewards. So they really are innately little people pleasers, and they want to please you. You know, they just sometimes struggle with knowing how do I please mum. So if you can role play that for them and you can demonstrate the reward process, whether the reward is praise or a sticker or a high five or an official reward chart, really it's just about finding your child's currency, which is usually attention from mum or dad or a family member, and using that to your advantage. And people tell me all the time, rewards charts don't work for my child, but essentially it is the consistency and the way it is delivered that works. The kids aren't really completely intrinsically controlled by the reward chart. It's the delivery of it, you know, and it's when we do consultations, it's how over the top we go with it and how much we realize it's super important, and we back it up with continuous role play until they actually see the behavior that is expected of them, and then they get that nice warm fuzzy feeling from the rewards as well. So trust me, toddlers do respond to role play and rewards around this age. And you can use this tactic to not only change sleep behavior, but also any kind of behavior, you know, toilet training or manners or mealtime behavior, walking to the car behavior, all of that stuff can be changed with things like role play and rewards. Another huge problem that people face around 3 years old is early morning wake-ups, which becomes increasingly popular with toddlers. Maybe they start some kind of little gang where they all discuss early rising. But there is lots of things that you can do to combat that, which we've talked about heaps, things like dark rooms, grow clocks, bedtime, and being really consistent around the morning wake-ups and what is acceptable in your house, you know. There's no point in allowing your toddler to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and watch cartoons, and then complaining they continue to wake at 5 o'clock in the morning, because you basically are encouraging it. So decide what your boundaries are and start being really consistent with it around this age. The other thing that can start to affect sleep is toilet training, and specifically nighttime toilet training around this age. So they can start to use the toilet training as a delay tactic around sleep in the evening. And I recently did a video on this on both pages, I think, and my Instagram. So around sort of tackling the whole toilet training and sleep and being really patient with them, but also setting up some clear boundaries so that you don't fall into the trap of allowing your toddler to get up 8-12 times every night before he even goes to sleep to go to the toilet, when, you know, he's largely got an empty bladder and he's just kind of playing around and having a bit of a game and delaying the onset of his own sleep, which is not great for him, obviously, too. But you do have to be patient because toilet training, as we know, is tricky for toddlers. So if you have any questions around that, I would love to hear your questions and I will be answering those for you guys as much as I can. But I guess in summary, you know, from 18 months to 3 years, toddlers go through a lot of changes. They have to go from having 2 naps to 1 to none. They have to go from sleeping in a cot to a big bed. They develop impulse control. They lose their emotional regulation and start throwing tantrums. They are physically more tired. Their little brains are growing like crazy, which places a huge demand on their bodies. And then as parents, we are exhausted dealing with this, and it's taking every ounce of willpower in our bodies to be consistent and positive about dealing with these kids. But at the end of the day, it definitely pays off if you can be really super positive and consistent and patient, and then also creative in your solutions, right? Because it can get really mundane and sort of tedious if you feel like you're just constantly some kind of sergeant major that always says no, no, no and lists rules to your children. So I do always try in our plans to be really creative around that whole role play scenario and rules and manners and books and the way that we tackle sleep issues for toddlers. I also feel that they always respond better if there is some positive stuff outweighing the negative. And I don't mean that saying no and having boundaries is negative, but to a toddler that's not fun, right? You know, mum saying no and being consistent with her boundaries. Whereas we can do so much positive stuff that will make the toddler so much more compliant without us feeling like we're going all sergeant major on them, you know. So lots of positive things like role play and rewards and emotion cards and books and all this kind of stuff and sleep meditation. There's so many positive things you can do to help your children sleep great in these toddler years, without simply shutting the door, doing cry it out and feeling like you're saying no, no, no all the time. Okay, so I hope that has been helpful for you guys. If you are watching this on replay, please ask me your questions and I will type some answers out to you. Happy to keep on top of that. And I will go through now and answer your live questions to the best of my ability. Andrea, just to let you know, guys, that Facebook cuts your question off at 4 lines, so I kind of have to guess the second part of a lot of questions. Andrea said her 23-month-old will often wake in the night and chat for up to 2 hours, happy but talking. That can be a sign that your daytime sleep needs to be reduced, Andrea, or that physically your child just needs to be a bit more tired when they go to bed because they're not tired enough to sleep the night through. Or they might need a little bit more tryptophan in their diet, and you can Google that one. That can also be a sign that they're getting low in iron if they can't consolidate their night sleep. You might find some light therapy over summer really helps with that. That tends to boost total melatonin, which helps with prolonged night sleep, that kind of thing. Anna, what is the ideal time for a 2-year-old to nap? After lunch, so 12:30, 1 o'clock, that kind of thing, depending on how long you want them to sleep for. Kim, how do you get them to bed from 8 to 9 to earlier? Kim, I would look at why they're not going to sleep until 8 or 9. Are they having too much daytime sleep, or are you inadvertently overstimulating them in the evening with your response to them not going to sleep? You know, we're only human. Is there lots of growling and begging and bribing and inconsistencies around bedtime? If there is, we've all been there, but that definitely helps fuel toddlers staying awake. That's literally like the fuel that they need to not sleep. Megan, hello, my 2-year-old girl has been taking up to 2 hours at night to go to sleep. Might be a sign she needs to drop her nap or reduce it. Hi Jane, 17-month-old, 1 2-hour nap from 12:30 to 2:30, falls asleep within a few minutes, bedtime at 7, but I can't see the rest of your question, Jane. I will read it and type you an answer afterwards. Kim, don't say that, my son only had 1 nap since 9 to 10 months. So he's probably low sleep needs, Kim, because he's already mucking around at bedtime now, right? So it does sound like he is a low sleep needs child. Sorry. Kate, hi there. Is there an ideal age to transition your child from cot to bed? I have covered that in this video, so go back and watch and you will be very happy. Hannah, 28-month-old, can take an hour or longer to go to sleep at night. She's happy in her cot. Hannah, if she's happy, you can just sort of ride it out and see if it goes away. Or considering she's getting close to 3, 36 months, you've got 8 months to go. So you might start to think about reducing her day sleep, maybe slice 15 minutes off it and see what happens, and then slice another 15. Hi Shaya, good to know my son will be 3 soon. Yes, hopefully this has been very helpful. Hi Louise, my 3-year-old's birthday yesterday. Happy birthday to him. Dummy taken away 2 weeks ago. Oh, well done. Still has comfort teddy, and I can't see the rest of your questions, so I will jump in and type an answer out to you as well. I don't know why Facebook cuts your questions off at 4 lines. My twins are good with their cots, turning 2 in 2 months. I want to keep this going. Yes, don't take them out of their cots, Anna. And especially twins. Funny story about twins and cots. I had a client once whose twins, a lot of cots have wheels on the ends of them. The twins jumped out of their cots as toddlers and then pushed the cots over to the door to shut the door and keep the parents out of the room overnight so they could turn the light on and play and monkey around. Never underestimate toddlers. Amazing. Even though they were in their cots. Kelly, do you just go cold turkey on day sleep? So Kelly, we chatted about that. I will save this video to the wall so you can watch from the beginning, and I've totally covered the dropping the day sleep and the ways that you can do that. Hannah, she still does it, even if a short nap or refuses to nap. Hannah, is she one waking in the night? Taking an hour to go to sleep in the evening. Then nothing more you can really do about it. You could try moving bedtime later, but if she's happy, that might just be her wind down process. It might take her a while. It is pretty normal for toddlers to take sort of 40 minutes to fall asleep. And we only really notice this if we're having to sort of lie next to them before we creep away, which I don't recommend. But then you can start to be thinking, okay, I think they're asleep after 10 minutes, and we go up to leave and they say, Mom, they cry out for you. So it can take quite a while for them to fall asleep. But I think also having a really dark room at that time, especially now that it's summer, if you're in New Zealand or Australia, really influences their sleep. And also I find with these summer months that my bedtime routine kind of goes a bit out the window because it's so beautiful outside, the kids are playing, and then suddenly I'm like, oh my goodness, it's 6:45, get in here and go to bed. And I kind of rush them through the evening routine, whereas in winter they tend to get a lot more time in their room where it's dark, really preparing the body for sleep so the brain can start to make that melatonin and that sleep hormone that they need. And all of these things can help with how quickly you fall asleep in the evening, as well as some diet things as well, like your vitamin B12, your zinc, omega-3, iron, like we've mentioned earlier. Yeah. Kelly, how long does it take for their bodies to adjust to a later wake up time? So if you're working on an early morning wake up, Kelly, with a really comprehensive plan, like something from our masterclass, I always say to give that 3 weeks. So give your consistent to a T plan 3 weeks before you say, I give up. So give it 3 weeks. And then honestly, it's really normal for toddlers to wake up at 7 o'clock one day and then 6:30 the next, and then 6:15 the day after, and then 7 a.m. again, That's quite normal for them to fluctuate a little bit like that. And the key thing that we as parents can teach them is just to stay in their beds or their cots and be quiet until 7 o'clock in the morning. And that way, the days that they are tired, they can go back to sleep. Everyone in the house can keep sleeping. And the days that they're not tired, it's not unreasonable to expect your toddler to wait, 30 minutes quietly in their beds before they get up. And when I say quietly, they might start singing to themselves or something, but that's fine. They're not screaming out and waking up the whole household. So yeah, I hope that has been helpful, guys. Obviously, if you do want some more help, we have the online sleep program for toddlers that takes you from 18 months all the way through to 4 years, and I will pop the links down that down there for you guys to check that out. That's something you can download and immediately start working on, and it has all those creative ideas in it that I've just talked about, so you're not left thinking, what can I do apart from cry it out, you know? And I'm dealing with a toddler, and it takes you through all those ages and stages, all the changes that are going to happen, so you can kind of preempt them. So if you do have a question, Eva, Grow Clock 2.5, you know the answer to this, Eva. If you do have a question for me and you're watching this on replay, chuck it in the comments and I will come and type some answers out. And those of you who I couldn't see the rest of your question, I will jump on the computer and type some answers out for you as well. I hope this has been helpful. If you have enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up. If you have someone who you would like to share it with, tag them below and they will get to watch this toddler video as well and figure out the changes that their toddler is going to be going through very shortly. Alright, thanks guys. I'm Emma from Baby Sleep Consultant. Thanks for watching.